everyone, and welcome to Virtually Tripping. My name is Zoe Cormier, and I'm an author and journalist based in London, and I write a great deal about psychedelics, so I'm delighted to be hosting this panel. We'll be exploring how virtual reality can enhance psychedelic medicines and psychedelic-assisted therapy. So we're going to be joined by Nanea Reeves, CEO of TRIPP, Joe Hardy, Chief Science Officer at aNUma, and David Glowacki of CiTIUS.
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 Yeah.
So I guess I would just start by asking you all to introduce yourselves. Nanea, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am the founder of TRIPP, and I'm also CEO. And delighted to be here with such a great and august group. I founded TRIPP in 2017, and with the goal to see if we could create altered states of being in virtual reality. I had the good fortune of being an early investor in Oculus, and that ignited and inspired a desire to see, how an experience might look combining some video game mechanics, mindfulness structures, sound frequencies, and bring them all together into the immersion of VR. And since then, we've grown one of the largest audiences in XR wellness. We're live on Oculus and PlayStation. We've had I think we're at 2.9 million sessions where we've been serving our product. And now we've just expanded into augmented reality experiences as well. And we have several clinical trials up and running. We also recently acquired a company called CiTIUS that has a psychedelic protocol that we're going to release on mobile. And that will be an audio support, primarily going into ketamine first. We've had a lot of organic adoption in ketamine clinics with our consumer product, and that's what inspired the acquisition of CiTIUS. So we really like to think of it more like reality layering. And how do you step all the way to full immersion? So it's less about VR or AR or mobile AR. It's really how do we enhance your current reality all the way to step you into an alternate reality.
And would you describe it as XR?
Yes, XR, mixed reality. And I was really excited to explore what TRIPP would be like in AR, and we had the opportunity to launch on the new Nreal smart glasses, and that's triggered a wave of more devices going online over the next 3 to 4 months of mixed reality. And it was exciting to experiment how we could do things with spatial audio to get your attention, open up portals, and so transform the way that you see the world around you. So we see VR as a way to transform the way you see yourself within and your connection to self, and now expanding into augmentation and enhanced reality, how we can transform the way you see the world around you and maybe drive a deeper connection to that. And you'll hear more from us in November. We'll make an announcement specific to AR.
Very cool. Joe, tell us about yourself.
Sure, yeah. My background is in psychology and neuroscience. I have a PhD in actually visual psychophysics was my background, understanding how the brain processes visual information. Mm-hmm. I am the Chief Science Officer and co-founder of aNUma. aNUma creates digital therapeutics at the intersection of virtual reality and psychedelics. The idea is that we bring together groups of individuals in a virtual reality space and take them on a guided journey, a psychedelic-inspired guided journey. By controlling the stimulus environment, the auditory and visual stimulus environment, we're able to create non-ordinary states. And using those non-ordinary states in a group setting, using the power of social experience as well, movement, co-presence, we're able to take people and put them in a space of therapeutic opening where psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy and those types of psychotherapeutic processes can be enhanced. Mm-hmm. So that's the idea. And we work very closely with Dave. I should just point that out as we're kind of having this conversation. So the work that we're doing at aNUma started in Dave's lab. And so he'll talk more about
Oh, cool.
the work that Dave did and, in his lab and sort of the initial science background behind the technology that's inspired what we're doing at aNUma.
Excellent. And David, tell us about yourself, which is, I know, a lot to say.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Zoe. And like Nanea said, it's really nice to be here with everybody, and I look forward to a good conversation. And I'm really, as someone that is excited about this area of research, I think it's really great to bring together people that have this mutual shared interest and see where we can go. So I'm a cross-disciplinary researcher. I run a research lab in northern Spain. I have a lab in Santiago de Compostela, and I also have a lab in northern Portugal. I guess I'm a really cross-disciplinary researcher. My interests kind of span computer science, neuroscience, aesthetics, cultural theory, psychology. I've written papers in religious studies journals, quantum physics, lots of different areas. And so I run a lab called the Intangible Realities Laboratory, which we call the IRL for short. It's our stupid little science joke. And really, we work at kind of the immersive frontiers of scientific, aesthetic, computational, technological, and spiritual practice, I would say. So I guess I'm known for my research work. So I've received a bunch of prestigious research grants and awards. For example, Aurora Society Research Fellowship. I hold the ERC grant right now. And I also work as I've worked for several years as a digital artist, Zoe. So the work I produce has been experienced by hundreds of thousands of people across 3 continents. And yeah, I guess the reason I'm on this panel is we wrote a paper in 2020. So it was the first ever published study demonstrating that we could get results from a VR experience which were statistically indistinguishable from results from moderate to high psilocybin doses. Oh. And so we compared it against, almost 2,000 experiments that had been carried out at the Johns Hopkins lab over the last decade. The work started really through conversations with my friend Robin Carhart Harris, who Zoe, and really showing him the sorts of responses we were getting from people who were experiencing what we had built in the lab. And I should say my specialty is really, I'm one of the world's leaders in real-time streamed cloud-mounted VR applied to scientific simulation and visualization. So we do a lot of stuff with VR for visualizing sort of hardcore quantum mechanics and nanoscience. That's really my background. My PhD is sort of computational quantum mechanics. So we're showing Robin the kinds of responses we were getting, and he said, well, why don't we do a more sort of design a more formal study? So we did that and submitted to CHI. So CHI is the ACM's annual sort of premier conference on human-computer interaction, and it created a lot of buzz. The paper, it was awarded the best paper from more than 3,000 submissions. And I guess it was the first paper ever that has demonstrated this was possible, proof of principle. And so it created a lot of excitement, and so that's why I'm here. And yeah, I have since started working with Joe and speaking with a variety of other people who are kind of interested in the potential of immersive technologies to create sort of phenomenological states, which are reminiscent of aspects of psychedelics.
Very cool. Okay, I guess the first most basic question would be, there's been so much research about psychedelic therapy. We've seen so many studies going back to the 1950s. We know that it works, and it's one of the hottest things right now. And the evidence that it does provide real therapeutic benefits is indistinguishable right now. So the question would be, if we already know that it works, why do we need to add a new form of technology that is expensive and inaccessible to most? And I think it's a fair question, and I'm going to throw it over to Joe because you have the most biological background.
Yeah, that's a good, good question, Zoe. The research on this, psychotherapeutic benefits of psychedelics are incredibly impressive, and that's actually why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I've just been incredibly amazed, actually, at just the work that's been done, especially out of labs like Robin Carr at Harris and University College London, now at UCSF, Johns Hopkins. The work that's been done there showing the effects in depression in particular, but a variety of other conditions. Everything from PTSD to substance abuse disorder, anxiety, social anxiety, all kinds of different situations is truly impressive. But it's not a silver bullet, and you always want to have as many tools as possible in the toolbox. One of the things with psychedelics is that it is not without side effects, right? So, there are definitely situations where people can have adverse reactions to psychedelics. So if you look at the research, the clinical trials work, the percentage of adverse events is extremely high. I'm thinking particularly of the work that Robin did comparing SSRIs to psychedelics, and in that study, something like 73% of people in the psychedelic group had adverse reactions of some sort. So anxiety is a very typical one, but there are a variety of others. It's also exhausting. It's a very, so there are adverse experiences that you can have with that. So that in that sense, it's not for everyone, and it's also not something that can be done indefinitely, frequently. So the idea is that something you need to do, a few times intermittently, and there's tons of opportunity for other things to bring into the mix. In addition to that, it's not going to be available. Psychedelics are not going to be legal everywhere. We believe that in the next few years we will see, MMDA, MDMA is going to be legal in the U.S. and psilocybin probably soon after that. Right now we've got ketamine. That's what we've got to work with. So, there's availability is quite low. And I would also say, Zoe, you said that the cost of of this technology that we're talking about is high. I would actually argue the opposite. Right. Comparatively, it's very inexpensive compared to psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. So this, I have an Oculus Quest behind me here that you can buy on Amazon for $300. And that is all the equipment that you need to have one of these experiences. And we can actually make it available through aNUma. We can make it available, on a rental basis, where a participant doesn't need to actually pay for the device to participate in a session. So, in terms of accessibility, we think that, using virtual reality to obtain these sort of non-ordinary states is actually going to greatly increase the availability and accessibility of these types of experiences.
So are you primarily focusing on therapy that doesn't involve any chemical substance, but purely the virtual reality?
Initially we're working with clinics, so places that right now there are ketamine clinics that do psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, and other clinics that do other types of psychotherapy as well, in situations that are using the VR as a standalone experience. It's a platform for supporting the psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, but we're not actually doing it in combination at this time. That's something that I think is very interesting to explore in the future, but that's not where we are today. I think there's tons of opportunity for layering these things together in a variety of different ways. But right now, it's all about using it as an added value kind of experience that therapists can use to augment the various techniques that they're using in their clinical settings today.
And we've seen some organic adoption in the ketamine clinics, and there have been videos that they've shared with us of even in-session usage where they're casting to a screen in the clinician can monitor what the patient is seeing during the infusion. And so what we decided when we saw that was we want to get more structure, more research around these deployments. They were just taking our consumer product. And so acquiring a company and the content created by Sunny Strasberg, who is a psychedelic therapist who's been working in the space for a while with Phil Wolfson, and she's MAP certified, creating audio content first, but now we're starting to apply that to audio reactive interfaces in VR that could potentially be used during the session. But really, we're focused right now on onboarding, anxiety reduction prior to the session, perhaps even a week beforehand of preparing for the experience, how to set intention, as well as post-session decompression and integration and ongoing support. So those are the opportunities that we look at, that we can, a digital solution can do a few things. On the business front, it could add a recurring revenue stream that's high margin and low risk. And I think in many ways that can preserve the integrity of the very disruptive and beautiful protocol of the psychedelic medicine, you know, being able to have great impact with 1 to 3 sessions. That's not how the pharmaceutical and medical community really likes to operate. They want you taking something every day. And so I think this is a way to really think about digital solutions that can help support that protocol with, you know, mechanisms that can actually be very supportive as well, to stay in touch with the patient and help them, you know, continue in a less invasive way to support themselves.
Sure.
I'd say something real quick
Yeah.
about your question. So your question was like, psychedelics work and the research is fantastic and it's growing. Why VR? And I think like one important answer, direct answer to that question is like, with immersive tech, you can curate forms of experience that are not available to you even with psychedelics, right? So like, it's hard, right? But like, so I just want to emphasize, it's really difficult to do it well. I think what you typically see in VR, single person video games, is like a kind of class of experience that like emulates journeying through worlds. And what you often see with VR is that, you know, experiences fall into a few very like well-defined categories, and you don't see too much variation apart from that. If you look at researchers like Mel Slater, who's at Barcelona University, neuroscientist, who's one of the absolute pioneers of sort of thinking about VR, you know, so Mel famously wrote a paper a few years ago about an experience called body transfer, right, where you could actually transfer, you could perceptually locate yourself in the body of another. This is a class of experience that you don't have access to anywhere in the phenomenological world, like with psychedelics or with any form of anything you can imagine. So what the paper that we just published, we describe this brand new class of phenomenology that sort of builds on the work of Mel, which we've called energetic coalescence. Again, this is a class of experience which is extremely powerful for people. I mean, if you look at the results in that second follow-up study to our first Kai paper, I mean, it's amazing. I think you've, you know, it's a class and a type of experience that's not available in any other way.
And I can confirm it's unlike anything I've ever felt.
Right. Yeah, you've experienced it, Zoe. So, I think like there, for me, as I guess a kind of design mantra for the lab and what we do in the Intangible Realities Laboratory, it's really asking the question like, look, psychedelics work great. We don't want to try and simulate them. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to abstract out the phenomenological impact of the experience into new forms of phenomenology that are only available in that environment, right? I think like one of the worst possible uses of VR is to simulate walking in the forest or something. I mean, like you should go walk in the forest. Like don't do that. Like, that's the worst possible thing, right? And when VR becomes a proxy for like, ignoring ecological collapse, you have a really big problem, right? You should go walk in the forest, or you should go up to the top of a mountain.
Yeah.
But insofar as VR can be, and so similarly, there's work that's been done in Anil Seth's lab where they took, Google Deep Dream convolutional neural nets, and you kind of saw something that kind of looks like some of the distortions you see when you take mushrooms. Very interesting work, proof of principle. The results when they compared to real psychedelic journeys weren't so compelling. But I guess, again, I struggle a little bit with that from a sort of research design perspective, because it's like, well, just take a low dose of mushrooms and you'll get those visual patterns. Like, why try to emulate that, right? Our brains are incredibly sensitive to things that aren't quite the real thing. And so for me, what's really important, and what a lot of researchers, my lab, Mel Slater, pioneers like Jaron Lanier, and a number of other workers in the neuroscience space have shown, is like using it to, if you pay a lot of attention to place illusion, plausibility illusion, you can design experiences that are only available in that environment, and which, in our case, have definitely shown a sort of transformational impact on people. And so it's like to say, like, that's where I just like encourage VR to be used for those sorts of things, not to give like slightly worse simulations of experiences that are already available to us in our sort of waking phenomenology.
Right, and then that was our design approach at TRIPP as well. We found, even with the concept of meditation in VR, to put you on a beach and have some Celtic voice tell you to inhale, it actually created a stress response, because all of us know what a beach should smell and feel like. Mm-hmm. And with the absence of those senses, it was the opposite of relaxing. And so that really opened our mind up to, why don't we create experiences you can't have in real life? Let's show your breath as crystals coming in and out. Let's make you feel like you're floating up into another layer of reality, while you know that you're also sitting in a chair in your living room. And it's that kind of hack that we found let people go, oh, wow. And in that, oh, wow, there was some kind of letting go that was unique in and of itself. And, we don't make any therapeutic claims yet until we have a large body of evidence, which we're in the process of producing. But the feedback that we got from the, almost 100,000 paying users on our service was, during the pandemic, it really helped them. And that we could look at patterns of moods and moods reported, time of day, demographic data at that scale, throughout 18-month timeline, and really start to learn what people were connecting with. What we found was most important was that people have a sense of agency over how they feel. If we put a female voice, because the data told us people relax more to a female voice, they would say, I want a male voice. If we said it was 7 minutes long, because that was the optimal time studied in VR for a sense of comfort, they said, I want to make it 20. And it was this recurring theme of, I want to be able to do it my way. And that's something that is unique to the use of technology that we can facilitate.
I just want to return to what David was saying about the use of VR, walking in a forest, and, uses of technology that are beneficial for us and, not a waste of our time. Nanea, you come from the video games industry initially, and right. I certainly, the media scares about video game addiction, and it damages your brain and it will ruin your life and blah, blah. And some of that did turn out to be true, but some of it didn't. But talk to us a little bit about what you've learned from the video game industry and how what you're doing now compares.
My first experience with video games was, I found a lot of psychological safety and benefit from, being in a very negative environment as a young person and going into a world where I could build and see myself as a hero and be in control in the environment. So that really influenced a lot of our design choices at TRIPP. And also, you know, you can trigger flow states. Video games have all the mechanics of embodiment, especially in VR, skill challenge ratio, and constant reward feedback loop. And, you know, those are also some of the triggers for, you know, obsessive usage patterns as well. And for me, though, you know, I love the video game industry. I think it gave me a love of technology. It was exciting innovation around technology, often an early adopter audience who are really loud and vocal and will give you exactly the data you need to make your product better. And so I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing now at TRIPP had I not worked in that industry and really understood how to build engagement models that will make people want to do your product repeatedly. And in mental health applications, digital therapeutics, the attrition is abysmal. And you can spend a lot of time going through an approval funnel and multiple, you know, tens of millions of dollars to get that approval and then go to market, and no one wants to use the product. And it's not something you can add on after the fact. The lamification that we see in mental health apps actually makes you feel worse about yourself. It's a constant reinforcement that you're not good enough the way that you are. And so we really understand a lot of those mechanics. And for me personally, being able to take, you know, the two things I love the most in the world, principles from my Dzogchen meditation practice combined with video game technologies and solutions, and try to apply that to help people. I feel like everything I've done in my life has prepared me to do what I'm doing today. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity. And I love working with all the academics that we've worked with. We made our data available to all the PhD students who couldn't do their research last year. And, you know, so we're seeing documents being produced from our anonymized data of our session usage. So it's been a wonderful, positive experience. And I think that more and more people like Joe and David and, you know, the team at TRIPP really trying to rethink what is our contribution with all of our skills working in tech. We can create wonderful work experiences for other people too.
So talking about mental health and how technology, you know, can be beneficial for it. Joe, tell us about what conditions you're working on and why, and how do you see this working?
Sure. I mean, if it's okay, I might respond a little bit to what Nanea was just saying, because what she was talking about was resonating with me as well. Thinking about, thinking about the video game work. I've done work in video games of a sort as well, mostly cognitive training games. So games that are explicitly designed to be beneficial and helpful for people. And, you know, some of the things that Nanea was mentioning about sort of, you know, that balance between skill and challenge that you can generate with technology. You can right size an experience. You can put people where they need to be at a given moment. And now with biofeedback, which is something that we're very interested in bringing into it as well, you can actually understand physiologically and subjectively where an individual is, where a group of people are, and affect the experience to sort of, you know, be where, you know, they need to be at that moment. So I think that, you know, that type of video game technology that sort of senses where the player is and then reacts and changes the game to meet them where they are. I think that kind of thing is extremely valuable, and also just understanding what's engaging for people. And to Nanea's point, also like the, you know, gamification. I hate that word also. Like, because if you're using that word, you've already lost. Because
100%.
You know, the whole experience needs to be designed to be engaging, or else it's not going to be engaging. You can't just tack that on at the last minute
Yeah.
it's just never going to work. So
yeah, your mental well-being score, right? Yeah.
right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so no, that what you were saying really resonated with me as well. So,
Sure.
but yeah, I mean, thinking about the application in different conditions. I mean, first I would just say that one of the things, I guess, maybe trying to like connect the dots between the video game conversation and the mental health conversation. One of the areas where we see video games really evolving and taking off and growing, especially in this past couple of years, is in multiplayer
Right.
games. And that's one thing that we're very, very interested in. Is we're in our experiences, we try to bring together people in groups so that they can have a sort of, it's almost like if you were going on a psychedelic retreat. Not everyone can afford to go to Costa Rica and have that type of an experience, but you can get together from wherever you are in your in your office or in your house and put on the headset and have a journey together and go on that experience together. So we see that as like part of the starting point of how this technology can be used.
Well, on that note, describing group experiences, David, let's talk a little bit about isness and how it's a group experience. And also, you've called it a new metallic technology. What does that mean?
Yeah, sure. So I guess like a crucial point is, so immersive technologies, VR, AR. We wrote a research paper 3 or 4 years ago now, I can't remember, where we talked about what we called at the time layered perception. So we talked about like how do you layer on top perceptions on top of one another. And so I guess I see like I don't like to, so the psychedelic state is very powerful, right, for people, but I don't necessarily know that it's like exceptional, right? And so what is quite interesting to me, if you look at the research that's come out of Johns Hopkins lab over the last several years, is what they've shown is that the thing that appears to have the therapeutic value for people is the strength of what they call the mystical type experience. This goes back to very old work by John Stace and Ralph Hood from the 50s and 60s, actually religious studies scholars. And so it's that experience that tends to have the positive therapeutic outcomes in the longer term. And so at Hopkins, when they analyze the experience that people have following psychedelics, what they typically do is they've developed a number of psychometrics where they try and get some handle on the strength of the mystical type experience, right? So they have a number of psychometrics they've designed over the last several years to measure that, and now they've applied those questionnaires to thousands of people in their lab. And so, the key thing that emerges is that strength of that mystical type experience is what leads to the positive therapeutic outcome. And that mystical type experience can be induced in a number of other ways. So Roland Griffiths a few years ago published a paper showing that the strength of the mystical type experience that arises from people that have God encounter experiences in both secular and religious contexts has a similar therapeutic benefit as psychedelics. So, the point of this is there's the psychedelic drug is sort of a convenient way to reliably elicit this mystical type experience. And so, excuse me?
It's a shortcut.
Well, I mean, you can think of it as a shortcut. So yeah, in the 50s and the 60s, there was a lot of criticism of psychedelics as a form of virtual reality because it wasn't a meditation practice, right? Mm-hmm. So now you see similar criticism from psychedelics of virtual reality because it's, not eating a molecule, right? So, there's just layers of critique, but and wherever you stand on that, the way when the first paper we wrote, I tried to just lay it out on a sort of continuum. And I said, everything is a virtual reality technology, right? In the sense that all reality is constructed. And, going into sitting around the fire and chanting and breathing with your friends is a form of virtual reality, if you like, right?
Mm.
Iconography, meditation practice, ringing the bells, lighting incense in Catholic Church 1,000 years ago is a form of virtual reality that actually constructs a virtual reality, which many people call God and they believe in. Like, that is a virtualized form of reality. Taking a psychedelic drug is a virtualized form of reality. Wearing some glasses on your head is a virtualized form of reality, right? Like, staring at this thing all day is a virtualized form of reality. We have all these virtualized forms of reality. And so the question is, how do you, what is the state that they lead you to? And so that was kind of effectively, that was the sort of research framing for the papers that we've written over the last few years. And so I called ISNES, which is the VR experience that we have been developing. I called it aNUmadelic in order simply to disambiguate it from psychedelics. So psyche, mind, pneuma, psyche, mind, deline, to manifest. So mind manifesting, that's the sort of word that Humphrey Osmond coined with Aldous Huxley that stuck for describing this class of drugs. Pneuma, from the Greek word for spirit or breath, plus to reveal, so spirit manifesting. And I called it aNUmadelic because what ISNES is really designed to do is to get people to see themselves as really to reveal what people phenomenologically seem to think is spirit. And much of the design for ISNES comes from my own sort of near-death experience and a number of the visions and things that I had there, and where I did see my spirit. And it turns out that the phenomenology I experienced in that state, if you actually look at the works of people like William James and Ralph Hood and Stace, you see that the phenomenology I experienced is actually common to people that have these forms of experience through the ages. And so I called it aNUmadelic simply to disambiguate from psychedelics, because it's not exactly the same. And I didn't want the psychedelic people to think that I was laying claim to their form of virtual reality technology. I wanted to make sure that it was clear that this was another form of virtual reality technology.
We've got 3 minutes left, and I'm going to ask a challenging question. Potential for abuse. So you've held up this device, for example, right? And since the pandemic, there's been a lot of talk about screen time and limiting it in children and so forth. With these experiences in VR, is there any concern about people adopting it at home and using it to excess, that they stop living in the real world? And the other question about potential for abuse, and this is with respect to the drugs, is anyone here concerned about overspill from the clinics? So, for example, ketamine is very addictive, and there was a huge epidemic of ketamine addiction in the UK that was really ugly to watch. Is anyone concerned about, for example, K is pretty cheap and easy to get. Maybe people could have these experiences in field trips, clinics, or whatever, and decide they can do it at home for much cheaper. What concerns do any of you have, and how do you, are you going to address them? Anybody?
For sure, we look at usage patterns regularly, and because we have a large body of users, we see different usage models. We have our largest cohort has been using our application 4 months or longer, which in VR is actually a stunning retention rate. That's not really the norm. It's not, a lot of people go, wow, that was really great. And, I have 4 other VR devices in my closet. So we're trying to encourage more consistent usage so that you get more of the benefits of taking care of yourself as opposed to long sessions. So our sessions are designed to be short. Mm-hmm. And now we're adding more infrastructure around encouraging more consistent usage models. But yes, we can identify patterns of abuse, and then we can determine how to respond to them with different notifications but we want to understand the impact first. We haven't seen anything that would be a cause for concern as of yet.
Okay. I'm afraid we've only got 8 seconds left, so I guess I have to thank you all for being here.
Well, thank you.
Good. Thanks, David. Thanks,
Thanks.
Nanea, and thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.